So how about this? Mike Tyson, Roy Jones will finally fight one another. Welcome to the 954sports.com YouTube channel. Thank you for stopping by. Some boxing to wrap up the week. And finally, a marquee fight between a couple of legends, both over the age 50. I shall explain, but hey, I will talk about both of these guys in the highest esteem possible when it comes to what they achieved in the ring. Distinguished champions for life. Both of them deservingly so. Hall of Fame boxers will now have a chance to square off. Back in 2004, at the time Tyson, towards the end of his second comeback as a pro, Roy Jones Jr. in the height of his peak as a hybrid boxer for all intents and purposes. Light, heavyweight, super middleweight. Distinguished himself as a middleweight throughout his career, but fought in the different classes. He passed up a chance to fight Tyson, would fight Antonio Tarver. I'll talk more about that. And that, of course, a decade and a half ago. Now they will square off. They'll have an 8-round exhibition. You know when you got the poster, it's official. There you go. Saturday, the 12th of September, 2020, live from Los Angeles. Again, an 8-rounder. Tyson 54, Jones 51. They'll mix it up at this sports complex. It looks really nice in LA. The Dignity Health Sports Park in Carson, California. Mike Tyson, Roy Jones Jr. Should be interesting. Should be interesting. Tyson announcing on his Instagram account that I'm back. Take a look at some of the training film. For a 54-year-old guy, I mean, he looks impressive. Throwing like he's a 24-year-old guy, right? 30 years his junior, he looks in that video, kicking some butt. Look at him hitting the mitts. Iron Mike, that was his announcement. I'm back. Huh. These two, as I said, esteemed champions, right? Tyson. He last fought 15 years ago. He wrapped up his career in that last fight against Kevin McBride. Seems like that was yesterday. Decade and a half ago, huh? 50-6. Jones has dabbled in fighting in his senior age, right? In the AARP years. He last fought in February 2018 against a guy named Scott Sigmund. He won the decision. So he'll get an opportunity now to mix it up against Iron Mike. And he was quoted as saying, Jones. Take a look at some of his prowess in the ring, just how good this guy was. Fabulous. He said, yes, it's true. Mike is a legend. It would be crazy to receive an offer to enter the ring with him and refuse. I had no intention of going back and fighting again, but for the sake of Mike Tyson, I agree to make an exception for me. This is an opportunity I cannot refuse. Of all those who wanted to go into the ring with him, he chose me. And since he did that, how can I say no? Question mark. How can you say no? And finally, we get to see something cool in the world of sports and boxing in the COVID-19 era, which has decimated the world of sports beyond the ring. I'm looking forward to every bit of this 8-rounder between these two champions. Jones, in his career, 66-6. Talk more about him. Titans of the ring, right? But they each had their own downfall. Tyson's, of course, came against Buster Douglas in Tokyo. In 1990, Tyson at the time had become the youngest heavyweight champion. This is January 86. Dynamite. Mike Tyson KOs. If I can find my glasses. Mike Tyson, the KO Kid, is a champ at 20. There you go. December 1, 86. Thank God for the specs, which I don't like to show on the camera. A little trick there. He was certainly at the top of his game in 86. He would fall to Douglas in 1990. And Mike Tyson would lose that fight in Tokyo. He would enter it as a 42-1 favorite. Shocked the world at Buster Douglas in 11 rounds. First time Mike Tyson ever hit the canvas, as he was the undisputed WBC champion. I'm sorry, he lost that in 10 rounds to Buster Douglas. But prior to that, as I showed you the Sports Illustrated cover, I want to show you this too. This is cool. This is the original poster for Tyson Douglas. The Tokyo Dome, February 11th, 1990. So prior to that, Tyson, as I showed you again, the SI cover, entered that fight at 37-0. 1988, I'd say, was the top of his game. 22-year-old world champ, defended his title 3 times in 88. Famous victories. Watch it. Destroys Larry Holmes. This in January. KO in the 4th round. Then I'll never forget this. Had a bunch of friends over for this fight. We all chipped in for the pay-per-view. Viewing June 88, Tyson. Talk about destroys. Just punishes Michael Spinks from the proud Spinks family. Spinks had absolutely no chances. Took 91 seconds. I remember it being so quick that we were playing basketball. My friend, there it is. Look at it. His eyes roll back. We were playing basketball on the court, rushed in for the start of the fight after the undercards, and within 5 minutes we were back out finishing our game of basketball on my driveway. 91. Just graduated high school. Look at that. That's Mike Tyson in his prime. Larry Holmes, not in his prime. He was an aging champ, but even Larry Holmes in his prime, he would not be able to withstand that onslaught. Also, interestingly enough about Mike Tyson back then in 88 when he was, again, on top of the world. Come on. He grew up a kid of the 80s. You played Punch-Out. Nintendo's best game ever? I'm stuck on Tecmo Bowl and Punch-Out. Toss-up. I see this and the memories flood. Don Flamingo, Glass Joe. All the guys you had to go through to get to Tyson. The whole rigmarole to... Rigmarole? I think that's a term. To get to actually fight with Tyson, there was a code involved and a whole deal. I love Tyson as much in the ring as I did in Nintendo. That's Tyson pre-tattoo on the face. You have to have some brass ones to put a tattoo on your face. Dare I say, Mike Tyson, elder Mike Tyson, was actually the only person in the world to pull it off? Maybe. You know, in 2009, I remember going and seeing The Hangover and just hearing how great it was. It was one of the few films that I just laugh out loud funny like every second, that I felt I got every bit of whatever $10, $11 a movie cost then. I haven't been to movies. Of course, you can't really go now, but I haven't been to the movies in so long. But I remember going to Hangover and just loving it. And Mike Tyson was sort of resurrected in that film. He was awesome. What a great film it was. Parts 2, 3, and I think maybe a part 4. I'm not even sure. Part 1 is the only one, The Hangover, the only one that should have existed, but you know how that goes with the sequels. But no, Mike Tyson was something special. Really was. Before he lost that Douglas fight, here he is with the legendary Cus D'Amato, the famed boxing guru and trainer who really got Mike Tyson on the straight and narrow. And off the streets of Brooklyn to train in the Catskills, made him into a champion. Cus D'Amato passed. His management would change. Don King would get involved. John Clayton was the Scott Clayton. Promotions and handling of his career with Don King, and Kevin Rooney was his trainer who did a good job, but the Tyson hanger-oners sort of took him away from Tyson, and that was the case when he went to go face Douglas in Tokyo. He was just overweight, and he missed the discipline from Cus D'Amato. He was never the same. After he lost to Douglas, his marriage with Robin Givens, I remember that like yesterday, that Barbara Walters interview. Barbara Walters. I like Barbara Walters. I read her biography. One of the true pioneers. But she had a little bit of a voice inflection that would sometimes garner some insults, like on Saturday Night Live, right? But I remember that interview, and Tyson was drugged during that interview, sedated. And Robin sort of led the way and got the best domesticated Tyson you could when he was throwing some difficult questions. No doubt about that. Unfortunately, after he got divorced, Tyson would go to jail in Indiana for allegations of, or a conviction, I should say. There were allegations of rape. He was convicted. And Tyson would serve time in an Indiana jail in the 90s, but he would make it back to the ring. And he'd have some legendary fights, including his second fight, Evander Holyfield, which I'll never forget. You will probably never forget. Biting Holyfield's ear. This is June of 1997. The fight called in the third round. Tyson disqualified, one of the strangest incidents ever in sports. Bizarre, to say the least. Just unbelievable. The first fight was stopped in the 11th round. Holyfield won that decision. That fight in June of 97, I was an intern at KPHO television, CBS in Phoenix in the sports department. And I remember it like yesterday. You know, it was on closed circuit TV or pay-per-view. We had a feed, and just watching it on this tiny little old school monitor for an editing bay, and my eyes popping out of my head like, what did I just see? And my job was to help them edit that clip, get it off the satellite, and to edit it and put it onto a tape and label it, help them write a script and a story and get it pre-produced for the sportscaster, who I believe may have been John Anderson, who is now with ESPN, a really, really nice guy. He was a really cool guy to be an intern for back in the day. So I'll never forget that in more ways than one. So Tyson had his ups and downs, right? After losing to Buster Douglas in 1990, and it's been a whirlwind career for Mike Tyson. Older, wiser, and a complete character in a lot of ways. Here are the two champs, modern day, pictured. One another from left to right. Tyson again saying on his Instagram account today, I'm back. I might just have to get an Iron Mike I'm back mask. I saw that online. Might. Jones has been a really solid broadcaster. You know, both guys, Mike Tyson is known for being a historian of boxing. I mean, with an unbelievable knowledge of the sport. And Jones, too. He comes off on his broadcast. He's a former champ, so of course he gives you that perspective. But just overall, as a broadcaster, very solid. So both guys have done well in and out of the ring. Jones, in 2004, when he passed up the chance to fight Iron Mike, he would fight Antonio Tarver, and that really diminished his legacy. He would lose to Tarver, get knocked out, and then he'd go on to lose 3 more bouts. And it was never really the same as a champion in the 3 different classes prior to that fight in 2004. But again, 2 just outstanding Hall of Fame boxers that when you bring up the greats and you say, you know, who would you say are the greatest of all time? These 2 are in the top 5, top 10 argument. Easily earn their way in. It would be interesting to see, you know, maybe the new 54, the new 45 is, no, 54 is the new 45, right? I don't know. Both guys are old. In terms of being a boxer, they're ancient. In terms of being an athlete, unless you're a golfer or a, let's see, what are other sports you can play until you're old? Golfer, what's the sport in the Winter Olympics? I'm thinking you can be an archer maybe when you're old. You know, a sport where they broom it and you get the puck. It's on the tip of my tongue. It's been one of those days, one of those weeks. That one you can play. The ice shuffleboard. It'll come to me. There are a few sports you can play into your senior years. I know down here in Florida they play a pickleball. It's like a condensed version of tennis. With my understanding, it's a little like shuffleboard. Curling, that's a sport in the Winter Olympics, right? You can be a curler, I think, at the age of 54 and be successful. Maybe I'm wrong. I did have a chance back in the day when I was doing radio to interview members of the U.S. men's and women's curling team. And they were super cool. They did an interview, a bunch of them were via telephone from Wisconsin. And then I did an interview in person with some folks from a curling club. I think it was the New England Curling Club when I was in Connecticut, and they brought in some actual gear. So I got to, you know, see the equipment, to feel it, what the weight was, and they kind of displayed it in a radio studio on the floor. It was pretty cool. So a little bit of background in the sport of curling, although I couldn't think of the name of the sport. But anyway, you don't think of boxing when you think of guys at the age of 54. Look at that. You don't look 54 to me. That's vintage Mike Tyson right there. It really is. I'll say one thing. I'm looking forward to it. September 12th. What the hell else do I probably have to do that night? Nothing. So Mike Tyson, Roy Jones Jr. See a couple of seniors go at it in the ring. See if they have any gas left in the tank. And if anything, it'll be interesting. And I'm betting they're going to compete, you know. Neither one of them wants to be embarrassed. They're boxers. They have pride. Mike Tyson, in addition to his on-back comment, made a few expletive-fueled comments that I didn't share with you where he explained his effing ego, etc., etc. And it's definitely ego is fueling this as much as anything else. It's an exhibition. Don't know if they're making coin or donating to charity. Don't know that angle. But I do know this. September 12th, Mike Tyson, Iron Mike, and Roy Jones Jr., you have my attention. I look forward to seeing you two boxing greats step in the ring. Better late than never. Jones-Tyson. Let's get ready to, right? You know the deal. I can't wait to see those two rumble.